Last night, former President Donald Trump made his first appearance in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention following the attempted assassination at a Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was an emotional appearance. I've not seen this side of Trump before. He seemed emotional. He seemed very moved by the audience reception calling his name. He also used the opportunity to announce his vice president would be J.D. Vance. Since the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, there has been a change in media narrative from immediately after to the next day after, and now a couple of days out. And it seems in the process, there's some major details that have been overlooked. We're going to have a close examination of those in this video. Now, what happened in Butler was a tragic event. Not only was it incredibly traumatizing, no doubt, for Trump, his family, his supporters, and all Americans who care about peace, but also we should pay tribute to the man, Corey Comparator, who lost his life shielding his family on that day. Now, if you're like me, what you saw on the weekend will have upset you and angered you. In fact, as you know, if you've been following this show, we cover political violence in quite some depth. And I think it is important that we continue to do so that we highlight what exactly is going on in the hope that things might be different in the future. With regards to how the media covered it, this was a simple story. It was simple from the beginning. There was an assassination attempt on the former president's life. We saw the video. We saw how the bullet cut his ear. We saw that it was only a few millimeters away from killing President Donald Trump. What happened was clear and simple. If you're watching like me, you would have seen quite clearly this was an assassination attempt. It should not be controversial whether you are on the right or on the left about what exactly happened. And yet there was unbelievable difference in reporting on what happened across the political spectrum when it came to the media. Despite that, let's look at the initial headlines that were all over the internet. The Washington Post: Trump rushed off stage after loud noises heard at PA rally. USA Today: Trump removed from stage by Secret Service after loud noises startled former president crowd. The BBC: Trump rushed off stage at Pennsylvania rally. ABC News: Trump says he was shot at rally in possible assassination attempt. Spectator killed and shooter. This ABC headline is absolutely ridiculous. Trump, quote, says he was shot at, quote, possible assassination attempt. Why include says? Why include possible? There is no doubt about what happened. In the same sentence, they say the spectator was killed. So if Trump says it, are you suggesting that it might not be true, even though you're also saying in the same sentence that someone was killed? CNN: Trump's speech interrupted by Secret Service. CNN again: Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. But if we're going to give media the benefit of the doubt, we should steel man the argument that they shouldn't be reporting on things without conclusive evidence, without being 100% sure about what happened. So let's have a closer look at the timings and when the media reported things. So we're all clear. Here are the exact timings of how events unfolded in Butler, Pennsylvania. At 6:03 p.m., Trump took the stage. At 6:11 and 33 seconds, the first shots were fired. 5 minutes later, ABC News reported at 6:16 p.m., Donald Trump escorted off stage by Secret Service during rally after loud noises ring out in crowd. Now, I would say within 5 minutes of the incident, this headline is understandable. But at time of recording this video, they still have not changed that headline. And changing headlines is exactly what the mainstream media have been doing throughout this story. The Washington Post published an article with the headline, Trump rushed off stage after loud noises at rally. At 7:22, well over an hour after the shooting, they changed the content of the article, but not the headline itself. They did eventually change the headline, but they changed it to, Trump says he was shot in ear during Pennsylvania rally shooting. Says... At 6:31 Eastern Time, the USA Today published the headline, Trump removed from stage by Secret Service after loud noises startles former president crowd. Now, this article was updated at 6:53, long after we had established it was an assassination attempt. However, they kept the headline the same. Jake Tapper, who you will remember as the moderator on the CNN debate between Biden and Trump, tweeted this at 7:30 10:33 p.m. Trump injured in incident in Pennsylvania. Tapper tweeted this even though at this point it was abundantly clear there was an assassination attempt. Tapper must have realized this as he swiftly deleted the tweet and posted this instead. Now, fair enough, he deleted that post and 5 minutes later posted something more accurate. But the question is, why didn't he post that in the first place? It's not like there was a long time lag between tweets. This perhaps tells us something about the instincts of the mainstream media. It seems to me that their instincts were to downplay what had happened. If it had been Biden who had had an assassination attempt, do you think they would have been so hesitant? No. This, to me, is the double standard. Now we're going to look at the second wave of media bias, the wave of media that came the following day on the Sunday. We're going to look at how that was different between the right and the left. We're going to have a look at what the underlying motives might be. As we have shown, there is clear mainstream media bias that we see on an almost daily basis. In fact, on this particular story, I've only just scratched the surface, but that's for a little bit later. I have teamed up with Ground News because they collate all of these media stories into one place so we can compare right, left, and center as stories develop. And that's why my team and I wanted to collaborate with Ground News on this story. I've met with the great people on their team and we used their website for the research on this show. So let's have a closer look at the Trump assassination attempt coverage through the Ground News website. Ground News gives me instant access to more than 700 articles reporting on it worldwide, with context on each publication's political bias, factuality, based on how subjective or objective their printed language is, and who funds them. Again, we can see left-leaning USA Today and ABC News downplayed the assassination attempt by reporting Trump was removed from stage after, quote, loud noises startled him and, quote, rang out in the crowd. The Irish Times behaved just as despicably, writing, in a society roiling with violence, even those who weaponize it are vulnerable. Right-leaning outlets were quick to call out, quote, liberal media's despicable coverage, reporting that their bias was, quote, on full display. If you're like me, you want to get to the truth, and for that, I can't recommend Ground News enough. To stay fully informed on all the stories that tend to become sensationalized, just like Donald Trump and the 2024 presidential election, I recommend Ground News. I'll give you another example specific to this incident on the weekend. Only 6% of left-wing media are covering the story that law enforcement spotted Trump's shooter nearly 30 minutes before shots fired. Ground News highlights these media blind spots. So go to ground.news/Winston or scan the QR code on the screen. They are offering you, my viewers, 40% off to the same Vantage plan that we here use at the Winston Marshall Show for unlimited access to all their features. Subscribing not only supports an independent news platform trying to bring transparency to the media landscape, it also supports my show as well. So check them out. The link is in the description. So let's look at the second wave of media bias. This is the Sunday morning headlines. The New York Post front page said Trump shot. See, it wasn't that hard after all. Isn't that the story? The New York Times front page wrote, Trump hurt, but safe after shooting. Nothing to see here. Trump's perfectly fine. Don't mention the assassination attempt. Let's move along. Next story, please. And whilst you're at it, let's crop out the American flag. We'd hate for him to look like a hero. This one isn't mainstream media. It's local news, but they managed to stoop lower even than Sky News, which really was beyond my own imagination. The Sunday Denver Post wrote, gunman dies in attack. So just to be clear, in an assassination attempt on the former president at a rally, and he's also a president nominee for this upcoming presidential election, when another attendee of the rally was killed protecting his family, the Sunday Denver Post ran the headline, gunman dies in attack. That's the story for them. Think about that. The New York Times published this. He failed the test of leadership and betrayed America. How far removed do you have to be from reality to think that that is appropriate less than 12 hours after what had happened? But this is, of course, the New York Times. As you know, they shilled for Hitler in the 30s. They shilled for Stalin in the 50s. This is a newspaper who have disgraced themselves decade after decade. From that context, and that point of view, actually, this is a continuation of the same old shit. On the Sunday, unreconstructed neocon David Frum published this article in The Atlantic, The Gunman and the Would-Be Dictator. Notice the use of the word dictator, a word that we've seen used time and time again ever since 2016 to describe Trump, particularly by left-wing media bias. We're going to go and have a closer look at that a little bit later in this video and how they may have paved the way in rhetoric into what happened on the weekend. Before that, let's look at the next wave of media and how right and left-wing media started covering how each other were covering the story in Pennsylvania. The New York Post. Media kept bias on full display after Trump assassination attempt. The New York Times. Republicans place shooting in Trump's narrative of persecution. Jeff Bezos' Washington Post wrote, Musk, other pro-Trump billionaires have helped shape shooting narrative. What narrative exactly do they mean? Is that to say that the narrative that there was an assassination attempt on Trump is not true? On a side note, left-wing favorite of this show, Vox, wrote, yes, it's still fair to call Trump a threat to democracy. You know what I think is a threat to democracy? Mainstream media lying and lying and lying and demonizing opponents so badly that people think it's a good idea to try and assassinate them. Now, this is still developing, but it seems that there is a narrative growing amongst left-wing media that this whole thing was staged. In fact, the word staged went trending on Twitter very shortly after the assassination attempt. But let's just think about that 1 second. How do you think that it was staged? Do you think they approached Trump before the event and said, look, we've got this idea. We're going to try and nearly assassinate you. We're going to have a gunman set up. He's going to clip your ear. He's not going to get you. He's just going to clip your ear. And then you're going to go up in the polls. But it might not work and you might die in the process. Do you really think that that's what's going to happen? Do you really think Trump is going to risk his life like that? Here's some of the language the mainstream media were using before Saturday.
And he has to be eliminated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight. Take him out now.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
The geniuses at The View have figured out exactly who to blame.
It was, a 20-year-old lone wolf, white, whack job with easy access to a gun. And we have to have a conversation about that. Because it wasn't a drag queen. It wasn't an immigrant. It wasn't a pissed off liberal woman. This keeps happening.
I mean, we've seen that many times now. Young white men.
Yes, it's always white men, apparently, who do the killing. Just whatever you do, don't look up Laken Riley. And whatever you do, don't look up the actual data on homicides in America. Vox reported on July 1st this year, Democrats say Trump is an existential threat. They're not acting like it. I wonder if Vox think that Democrats are now acting like it. President Joe Biden tweeted this on June 29th. Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He is a threat to our freedom. He is a threat to our democracy. He's literally a threat to everything America stands for. Biden also said this.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
But for the last 8 years, we've been pummeled with the idea that Trump is literally Hitler. This has come from politicians, but it's also come from the mainstream media. The New Republic had this as their front cover of Trump as Hitler. Jeff Bezos' Washington Post published this headline. Yes, it's okay to compare Trump to Hitler. Don't let me stop you. Here's Hillary Clinton on The View.
What, in your view, would happen if he were to be reelected?
Oh, I can't even think that, because I think it would be the end of our country as we know it. And then they would try to do away with elections and do away with opposition and do away with a free press. And you could see it in countries where, well, Hitler was duly elected.
That's right.
Right?
MSNBC pundit Joy Reid had this to say.
That's all I want to know. Who I got to vote for to keep Hitler out the White House.
Comedian Dave Smith put all of this better than I could have myself when he tweeted, how the fuck can you say he's literally Hitler and democracy is on the line, but we wish him a speedy recovery and political violence is never acceptable? I've always found the literally Hitler narrative utterly despicable, and I'll tell you why. Firstly, one half of my family fought against Hitler. They put their lives on the line to do so. And on the other side, my Jewish side, 13 members were killed in the Holocaust. The idea that Trump is Hitler undermines how evil Hitler really was, how evil what happened in Europe in the Second World War really was. And if Trump really is literally Hitler, then how can you be surprised when people try to kill Trump? If you think Trump is literally Hitler, you are utterly misinformed. You are utterly historically illiterate. Do some homework. Do some research. The term far right has been so used and abused to describe things that aren't far right, that when the actual far right turn up, people will stop believing you. Be accurate with the words you use. There are real repercussions. So where does this leave us now? What does this all mean for the future of media? Well, Fortune wrote this headline: trust in media is so low that half of Americans now believe that news organizations deliberately mislead them. Well, like you, I'm exhausted and exacerbated by the mainstream media and their bias. That is why I have set up the Winston Marshall Show, and I think that's why you are subscribed to the show. In under 6 months, we have over 200,000 subscribers. I'm extremely grateful for all the support, and I hope to continue covering stories and issues just like this, which I think are not being properly covered in the mainstream media. How is this all going for the mainstream media? Well, Trump is now polling at 72% chance of being the next president. If they're trying to undermine President Trump, the inverse has happened. They have lifted him up. This whole assassination attempt has helped him, much to their despair. The mainstream media are telling us that division has never been higher, but the polling suggests that we are all exhausted by it. All eyes will be on Trump, who on Thursday is due to give his first post-assassination attempt speech. Rumors are that he is going to use the opportunity to bring the country together. I am exhausted by it, and I don't even live in America. I really hope America can find its unity once again, because diversity is not our greatest strength. It is unity which is our greatest strength. And America, I hope you find that unity just like President Joe Biden almost did just the other day.
So tonight, I'm asking every American to recommit to make America what to think about.
Thank you for watching the Winston Marshall Show with me, Winston Marshall. If you want to support me and the show, all you have to do is press subscribe. 200,000 people have now done so in under 6 months. I'm completely overwhelmed by your support. If you do that, I can bring on more great guests. We recently had Mike Benz, formerly of the State Department, and I can cover more important issues, the ones that you want to hear about. Let me know in the comments what topics you want to discuss. Let me know in the comments where you think I've got it wrong, where you think my thinking can be improved. I appreciate all constructive criticism very much indeed. For now, that's me. Be well.